life.
Oh, you know that.
Oh, I do know. Because I will... Actually, Kim bought me this cup for my birthday. It's a wine glass, and it says, I would shank a bitch right in the kidney for you.
And I would, too.
It's so true. We've watched a lot of crime shows, and if anybody fucks with Kim, they're fucking with me.
Yeah.
Frank and Lauren, I love you. But hell hath no fury as a podcast co-host.
Yeah.
Bitches. I'm sorry.
Anyway, we digress.
So, after the detectives, they interviewed Pi and the other neighbors. They say, yeah, there's this fucking weirdo, George Trepal, that lives next door. So, the detectives end up on George Trepal's steps. He was a short, stocky kind of guy with a thick beard and Coke bottle glasses.
Interesting.
So, your average geek. Not that I know a lot of them, but I do. He seemed to be innocent and harmless. But ultimately, an undercover investigation would lead the world to see what a fucking monster this douchebag was. He was a member of Mensa.
Oh, so he was incredibly smart.
Right. So we're talking about the top 2% of IQ tests. And first off, you know what? I don't fucking care what your IQ test is. If I drop you in the middle of nowhere and you can find out how to get yourself through a hospital system or anything like that, you could belong in Mensa. But I don't want to fucking hear it just because you have a degree in so-and-so. Because look, they invited us in. But Kim and I were like, no, this is not worth our time.
And then they said, oh, sorry, we made a mistake.
Like, no, we only eat pizza rolls. We don't eat bagel bites. Because we're classy bitches like that.
Yeah.
Fuck your murder mysteries and your smartness. So they find this arrogant asshole. He's an asshole, not an asshole. And they say, hey, what is your relationship with your neighbors, the Carr family? So he was like, I don't really know them. And, they keep to themselves and this and that. Meanwhile, the whole neighborhood's like, listen, he complains all the time about their barking dogs, their loud kids playing their drums and this and that. So it's like, listen, don't cover that up. We're going to find it out. It's a murder mystery. We're going to notice that.
Mm-hmm.
If Kim goes missing when she comes to my house in a shallow grave, I'm sure the police are totally going to put a net out around my house. Because
they're going to throw a butterfly net over your head.
But I'm going to make it look like Frank did it. I'm sorry, I'm just kidding. Alright, so, he's trying to blame it and like, oh, the neighbors thought that she should leave and all this and that. So eventually, detectives approached Susan Gorick. She went undercover to actually get to know and try to expand her knowledge of Mr. Trepal. So they approached her with what they would ultimately call Operation Pale Horse. So let's step back. Pale Horse was an Agatha Christie novel that she wrote about a murderer who used thallium as a weapon.
Uh-huh.
And during her investigation, she would find a copy of this book on this idiot's coffee table, labeled as such.
Oh, wow.
So he listen, he might have been smart, but he's not that creative. So she did an in-depth look into the mind of him, and she also got really close to him, which is scary. So let's focus. Trepal was born in 1949 to a New York City police officer. In 1972, he graduated from the University of South Carolina with a degree in psychology. But then 75 hits, and this asshole lands himself in jail for 3 years because he was arrested and convicted of setting up a lab to produce and sell meth. He felt he was untouchable.
Nice.
You're not Breaking Bad, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But he did use the P2P cook. which is old biker meth, as they call it.
Gotcha.
I'm not impressed, but maybe Vince Gilligan took some. I don't know. I'm not a screenwriter. So, he did 3 years in a federal prison in North Carolina. He was known to be a very good computer programmer, and he also would write programs in computers so that he could earn a living. But that was until he married Diana. Diana was an orthopedic surgeon, and her money was enough that Trepal really didn't need to work. So he sat on his ass and putzed around. Whatever. You do you. But, so the couple were both a part of Mensa, which again is part of the 2% of the population. Look, Kim and I were totally asked to join, but we're like, no, this is too bougie for us. We have common sense and we need to share it with our fans. So the couple were designated as the coordinator of their local Mensa's murder mystery weekends. So essentially, it was Clue.
Oh, I love that game. Colonel Mustard in the kitchen with...
the candlestick.
Okay.
If you get killed by a candlestick, that's lame.
I love that. We should play that game. All right, go ahead.
So he and his wife would plan these weekends. So, all right, so say you and I go up into Holiday Inn at Troy. And...
I don't want to go to Troy.
I don't either, but that's where a murder is going to happen.
Okay.
If it's going to happen.
Okay, that's true.
We got to be honest here. So they would set up, they had this elaborate script. So and so dies by so-and-so in the kitchen with the lantern or candlesticks, things like that. And he prided himself on doing these because he was like, I'm so fucking smart, nobody will ever catch me. So this is how Gorgak would actually put her foot in the door. So he knew he was intelligent, and after Peggy's death, he was just like, la-di-da-di-da, I got away with murder. But Gorgak was like, fuck you, you're going to jail. So she would officially introduce herself to Trepal by writing a letter requesting an invite to the murder mystery dinner on an upcoming weekend. She actually dimed the alias of Sherry Gwynn, and she would request to join this thing, and it was accepted, and they sent her a registration form that she had to fill out for the April 14th murder mystery weekend, which was actually held up at the Winter Haven Holiday Inn. So at this point, she's nervous. She's going into uncharted territory, and she knows she can't like just come up and fluff up her feathers to this motherfucker. She's got to appease to his ego, and like it's dipping your toe in versus
right instead
belly
of
flopping.
Yeah.
So she starts out that way and had a good result. So within the next couple of weeks, she did meet regularly with Trepal. At one point, he actually invited her to his home. She was exhilarated by this because being invited to the home of someone that you think is a serial killer and could have evidence of his crimes is just like exciting.
Yeah.
So she was, she's all about it. While she didn't find any evidence while she was there, she wasn't really poking around either. It's like, oh.
Yeah, she didn't want to draw attention to herself.
Right. Here's your cup of tea. Here's your glass bottle of Coca-Cola. So, actually, she never came up with traces of poison. But, she's hanging out. So, they officially met on April 14th, face-to-face, when she went up to the murder mystery weekend. And at this point, she was like, okay, I have him where I want him, and I just need to keep this fish on the hook. So she kept talking to him, and so during this time, Sherry or Susan would actually talk about that she was going through a bad divorce, and she just needed some kind of outlet. Jokingly, Trepal says, do you know that company FTD? I hear they send poison flowers. And he laughed. She just shrugged it off as, okay, whatever, he's a fucking weirdo. And then later, he suggested that she blackmail her husband to get what she wanted in the divorce.
Oh my gosh. Ballsy little bastard, huh?
That's why I'm like, look, you're in Mensa and you're fucking doing this kind of shit. You cannot. You're not worthy.
See, just because you're smart doesn't mean you abide by the law.
That's why you and I ducked out. We didn't want that responsibility. Yeah. So as the investigation went on, Trepal's wife had been transferred to another practice because she was an orthopedic surgeon, and they ended up moving to that area. Eventually, Trepal rented his home to Sherry because she was going through the divorce and all of this other stuff. So she would actually pack up, not a lot of stuff, but like just enough to kind of...
make it look like it was happening.
Right. Because the second he was out and she was in, crime scene techs, FBI, everybody who were on that shit like white on rice.
Wow, that was
or flies.
Genius to get in there like that.
She was so smart. So, he mentioned all this crap, and the techs are taking all sorts of things. And then, so as we know, the government, state or federal, take their fucking sweet time doing stuff. The holiday had come and gone, and all of those areas in the house that were swabbed for thalidium still hadn't come back. But they hit fucking pay dirt when Agent Breck found a dishpan with several small bottles in it. The bottles and the cotton balls were also sent to the crime lab for analysis. As the time passed, Sherry wanted to know what was going on. They didn't really have answers from her, so she goes, okay, I'm going to meet with Trepal and inform him that detectives came by asking questions. If you want to spook somebody, that's a best fucking way to do it. Because he's not living
and
there.
And even if you didn't do anything wrong, it's still going to kind of spook you.
Which is why she said something, because she's like, I didn't do anything wrong. I just moved in here.
Mm-hmm.
So she was so smart in thinking that. So during their videotaped meeting, Trepal responded, oh yeah, the neighbors were poisoned. But then his demeanor changed. So he went from Jekyll to Hyde, and he says, I hope I'm not a prime suspect, because that could be really messy. And she's just sitting back taking in notes. Because she knows at this point, she's not a victim, she's not a target, things like that. Like, he had obvious what most poisoners do. They don't just... Because if a poisoner really just didn't give a fuck, they'd find the local water source and poison that.
Yeah.
This idiot was poisoning specific products for this family. So, she tells him this, and it didn't really spook him to the amount of time, like the amount of anxiety that she wanted him to have. But while this was going on, the FBI found traces of thalidium in the evidence they collected.
Wow.
So now they have this motherfucker.
So he fucked up. He left evidence behind.
Right.
Because he got cocky.
So much fucking Mensa.
Mm.
Look, I'm smart enough to know that, like, if you're gonna fucking poison somebody, you fucking smash that bottle and flush it down the toilet. Don't do that, but...
Don't poison people.
No, don't poison people, but don't say, oh, I'm Mensa, and then do something fucking stupid like that.
Yeah.
Hence why we're not a part of it. So, they come back. So on April 7th of 1990, Gorick, who is also known as Sherry, Brecky, and Mincy met with the Polk County Sheriffs to decide how they were going to capture Trepal and his wife. So they made a plan, and Sherry actually called Trepal and kept him on the phone until the FBI and officers made headway to the house. So she's playing interference there. So she's on the phone with him. His wife opens the door, and his wife's like, what is this about? And she's not letting anybody in the door. And they're like, we have a search warrant. And she's like, no, you don't. And, she's throwing a hissy fit and all this kind of stuff. But then they look up the stairs. Here's this motherfucker in bikini briefs.
Okay, well, maybe he had a nice body.
Well, they're like, dude, put some clothes on and come downstairs. So they get his wife and him in the kitchen, and they place him under arrest for first-degree murder of Peggy Carr. Because now they have the evidence, the motive, and the dead body.